What is going on, everybody? Thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream segment of Mikasa Sukasa. And of course, as always, I am your humble host, Niko House. Today, I have with me a very special guest, and we will be talking about something that has been a hot topic of discussion over the last few days. Mail-in ballots, and what's true, what's false, what's myth, what's legend, and what is accurate from the opinion of somebody, well, I won't even say opinion, the facts from somebody who's actually tracked down mail-in ballots on the ground, has made election integrity the centerpiece of a lot of his investigations as a journalist over the last few years. And that man is my guy, your guy, and a fellow member of the MCSU network and the Convo Couch, Pasta Jardula. What is going on, Pasta? Thanks for being here. I know that it's been a hell of a weekend or a week, I should say, for you. I know you just got back from Vegas, and you and Fiorella and Johnny did just amazing coverage of the election thus far. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing well, but I should be wearing all black this morning because I should be attending a funeral, Niko. It is over. It is dead. Democracy is done. You know I'm not a fan of Donald Trump, but what we're talking about over here is what something that was set in motion from 2016 when you were in the courtroom, when the Democratic Party said not only did they cheat, but they had the right to cheat. Yeah. And it just set off a whirlwind of what the hell is going on with our elections over here. What is happening? And today, and it is sad to see a lot of leftist Democrats standing behind these results. They actually believe that Joe Biden, our savior in chief, Joe Biden, the zombie man, got 5 million, close anywhere between, when it's said and done, 4 to 5 million more votes than Barack Obama, who had the record, who filled stadiums. Joe Biden couldn't fill my living room. Okay, I mean, that's how bad he was. There was zero enthusiasm. And hey, I know you hate Donald Trump, ladies and gentlemen, but let me just say this: if you stand for this malarkey, no pun intended, if you stand for this sham, this shame, you are just never going to get out of it, ladies and gentlemen. It shouldn't be about who wins or who loses. It should be about the process that we've been fighting for all along. You didn't go to that courtroom to go fight for Bernie Sanders, Niko. You went there to fight for fair democracy and our elections, the most sacred thing we should have. One person, one voice. It's dead this morning.
The same election, the same process that we've literally overthrown governments to preserve in other nations, and we seemingly can't get around. I'm telling you, I've been trying to reach Evo Morales' cell, man. I'm like, bro, where you at, man? We could use you right now, because his election system is so secure that it literally helped to commit a coup of a coup, right? Yeah. And that's how secure every single election system should be. And so a hot topic of discussion, right? So when we're talking about the 5 million votes that that he's going to beat Obama's record by, I keep telling people that it doesn't make any sense. Like, if history has shown that when you set a record like that, well, then you take the House back, you take the Senate. And in Obama's case, he had a supermajority in the House and a filibuster-proof Senate, and won mayoral and gubernatorial races around the world, as well as taking over a couple of state houses and senates. And yet this time, we're not seeing that. We're seeing Trump set the record with people of color, which is like, the hell, like, for a Republican anyway. We're seeing the GOP take seats back in the House. They increase their presence in the Senate, and they're retaining all their offices in the municipality races. So something isn't jiving right. And what people tell me is, no, the turnout can be explained through mail-in ballots. Now, there's two problems with that. One, okay, if the Democrats receive most of the votes from mail-in ballots, so why aren't the seats in the Senate being flipped? Because the votes should be about the same. When you see that spike for Joe Biden, the spike should also be for the Democrat as well in those exit pollings when they get released. And I doubt that we'll see that. But there's the other problem. None of this is the people's perception of how mail-in ballots are counted and how they are presented and how they're, if they're even secure, their perception is completely wrong. Like, I don't know how to say it. It's completely wrong. And I would like for you to detail to us the experience that you had with dealing with election ballots and trying to track them and track the chain of custody out in California.
Okay, Niko. So what happened was after that decision came down, when you were in the courtroom and the Democrats said they can cheat any way they want, I just started doing some investigation and started looking into everything. The main elephant in the room, if you talk to all the activists, was Okay. And the argument, in fact, too, was the tabulation machines, who the way we count these votes has proprietary software in them. Anybody can flip them at any time. The Democrats are trying to say the Russians were flipping it. The Trump loyalists were trying to say the Democrats were flipping it. Whatever the case may be, everybody was pointing the fingers. But needless to say, we have proprietary software there. They can change the code, whatnot. But I started thinking, with all the eyes on the proprietary software and the argument, should we just go to hand counting only, or should we go to open source machines, then hand counting, or whatever the case may be? How do we audit this system? Because we don't have audits, which is kind of crazy with all these people standing behind these results with no audits, nothing to check
no
your
mandatory
work.
audits, not even a call for an audit.
Yeah, I mean, we have a 1% audit. They were calling me saying, Pasta, why aren't you down here this morning for the 1% audit? I said, because it's a 1% audit. And I'm done playing these little reindeer games right now. If anything that comes out of positive out of this morning is that the fact that we're going to start looking into the process and saying we need to get this fixed here. However, I don't think that's going to happen because most of the Democrats, even some of our fellow progressives, are more concerned or more happy, I should say, that Donald Trump lost and he's out and Joe Biden's in. So I don't think we'll ever get to that. But while all the eyes, let me digress back to all the eyes on the tabulation machine, I said, wait a second. We know they're suppressing in the front of the house long lines. They're pretty much disenfranchising young people to come vote by making the system so jammed up that they don't have enough time or patience to wait for it. But what's the other aspect? Absentee ballots, mail-in ballots. I said, wait a second over here. And the thing that really sparked me off and said this is going on, it was over a year ago. I called my registrar and I said, hey, I got some questions about the mail-in ballots. And the first question was, you have a big office over here in Norwalk. Are they made there? Do you print them there? Who does the software? Does somebody just create a program? You print them out, you mail them, they come right back to you? And it was a lot of, well, let me get back to you on that, Niko. Let me get back to that on you. You know what I'm saying? One of those things. I said, well, okay, well, get back to me. So he calls me back 2 days later. He goes, listen, this is Los Angeles County. The mail-in ballots are made at a third-party company right outside of Seattle and Washington.
How is it a third-party company? It's a federal election.
That's what they do. They can always listen. It's a third party that tabulates our machines in a federal election. It's proprietary software. So why not go all the way, baby? Why are you going to stop this there? But isn't it a little bit odd? You've been out to LA plenty of times before. There's millions of printing shops out here. There's more places to get anything done printing wise whatsoever. And in fact, even if you wanted to make a ballot that was secure in-house, you have $350 million they spent on this last election in Los Angeles.
I thought was one of the things they would be spent on, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. You make your own ballots. You make them secure. You add in tracking so you know the chain of custody stays intact. When it comes to your door, the mailman is reported it's dropped at your door. When it leaves your door, the mailman tells you that it left your door. You know what I'm saying? That's how you secure these things. But anyways, the third party was out there. So then I started saying, hey, well, wait. Well, how do they get mailed out? What's going on? And I had to put it, we were trying to find the contract, and how lucky we were when we were following the Raji Raj case that he took all the way to the Supreme Court, which is a gentleman who ran for Congress against Brad Sherman, deep state Brad Sherman. I like to call him Mr. Patriot Act Brad Sherman in Los Angeles. He got involved in a lawsuit twice now and took the first one up to the Supreme Court. But in this particular case, lo and behold, he was asking, he was pertaining about early counting, which is a whole nother mechanism we can get into of cheating.
Yeah.
But he was asking where the ballots were made, and we were able to get a hold of the contract. A company called K&H, right outside of Seattle, somewhere in Washington. Now, inside that contract, I started looking. I was like, well, what happens? Do we give them the voter roll and they just print it? Because most of the election integrity activists were saying, oh, that's just a printing company. That's just a printing company. No. You look at the contract. They don't just print, they store, they ship, they receive, and they do data processing. So the integrity of our election rolls are handed over to a third-party company, which is also, Niko, proprietary owned. You don't know who owns this company because it's one of those zombie companies of another zombie company, of another hedge fund zombie company. So you don't even know who owns this company. And now you have a nefarious actor that you can tell him, hey, make extra ballots to this person. Make extra ballots for that person. Invent somebody's name. Print out dead people's ballots. We'll get them. We'll harvest them. We'll hand them in.
Question, do we know how long they contracted with California?
I don't know long this company has done it for, but I know it was done since 2016. They've been the contractor. In fact, I think they had a new contract maybe in 2017 where they re-upped a new contract because the contract also stated all the ton of money they can get more money if they want. You know, and there's a lot of fugazi things about the mail-in system too, which the legislation takes advantage of. You know, we say this all the time. It's not the federal government that does these elections; it's the state. So the Secretary of State has more power than the president in, you know, every single state when it comes to that election. That's why for a lot of Trumpers out there right now that are saying, well, what's going to happen? They cheated. Are we to get this straight? Usually the courts don't overturn these things, and the federal government really can't get in there and change the state's mind. And it's like a boxing match. Hey, Joe Biden was able to slip a bunch of headbutts in, and you can't call timeout. And they kept the process going, so they stuffed that ballot box, I believe. Because I started calling around and finding out what's going on with the mail-in process. Just one quick point, Niko. Here's the thing. I said, well, are the ballots mailed right back to the registrar's office so it's for security and stuff? Oh, no, they're mailed to a P.O. box. Then we send employees out there to get them. So you're telling me they go to a P.O. box? To a P.O. box. Who
picks them up?
Well, the registrar assured me that it's always two people at one time, but it's registered, it's employees that work for the state employees or, county employees that will go pick it up and just go pick it up at the P.O. box. But when you talk about the chain of custody, I can go out. If I want to be in the bag for Donald Trump, I go pick up these ballots with somebody. I eliminate all the Joe Bidens. I only bring, Donald Trump's back. Now they say, oh, we have tracking on the ballot. Oh, we have tracking on the ballot. You only get called when the ballot gets there. They don't track the whole ballot, and they don't even tell you if they count your ballot or not. So I mean, there's so many areas that are just really just, Niko, this is dangerous shit we're dealing with here, and we need to get it straight.
And what people have to understand about this is that the process that you're describing that you've been actually been investigating is actually the primary process. So this isn't something that you could blame like on the Republicans, right? The contracts would likely be given by the Secretary of State's office, and that's Alex Padilla, right?
Yep.
So Alex Padilla, a Democrat, and then of course you and Fiorella and Johnny have really been on his ass since 2017, 2018. Basically telling him, like, you know what's about to happen in this primary because of how fucked up this system is. Do something about it. You have $350 million to do something, so fix the system. And instead, they made it worse. They didn't shore up where there were issues. They made it worse. And then we saw the results of that. Everything that you all predicted did come to pass in the primary. But the point is that this isn't. I think that this is where the misconception is. People think that the point that you've been making and that Fiorella's been making and that I've been making is that, oh, this is happening because it's against Donald Trump and because it's against Republicans, and the Democrats are just always like, no. What we're saying is we've already seen this story. We've already seen this in the jungle primary of California, where we were all following very closely as you and I watch as Pelosi got 60,000 votes out the gate. Every single vote that had been counted up into that point went directly and only to Nancy Pelosi. And then like Dianne Feinstein got like 100,000 to 200,000 votes out the gate. Every single vote that had been counted up into that point went directly to Dianne Feinstein. So this is something that we've already seen done. We know what it looks like because we've already seen it. We've already been investigating. We've already been discussing. We've already been analyzing. We've already been calling out the inconsistencies. And people are so wrapped up in their Trump derangement syndrome that they don't want to see what's right in front of them because, well, I mean, to be frank, it would make them lose complete and total faith in this system. They would realize all the analysis that they've been basing all the things that they've been basing their analyses off of is as you always say, it's fugazi. It's not real. That's what we've been telling you.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, too, is like, if we allow this to happen just because it's Donald Trump, that we allow it to happen when we have our candidates running. And not for nothing, it's been happening to our candidates anyways. And these same Democrat progressives that are cheering on the cheating right now, literally, these were the same tactics that we used against Bernie Sanders, too. You know, when we were always in line and we were out there, we were reporting, and it was like 1% in, 2% in, thousands of people in line, but the mainstream media would call for Hillary Clinton, or the mainstream media would call for Joe Biden. You'd question that. Like, wait a second. You have all these people in line. The polls don't close for 2 hours. Or the polls just closed, and this, you know what I'm saying, whatever, and you're calling it right away. Oh, we have all the mail-in information, so we can call it, is what they tell you. We have all the mail-in information. So that's why I was just like, oh, let's take a look at these mail-in situations. So I said, first off, let's look at the security of the mail-in ballot. You know, when people are calling me right now and saying, "Oh, everything's good. The mail-ins are accurate," it's like, no, they're not.
Based off of what?
Listen, well, they're saying the counts. Like, in other words, so if you live in Washington or if you live in Nevada, where you can see the actual counts that come in, whatnot, fine, you can see the count is accurate, right? Maybe that might be the case, but you don't know where that ballot's coming from. Back in the days, Boss Tweed time, when the late 1800s, the early 1900s, they dubbed the mail-in ballot the secret ballot, because you don't know where it's coming from or where it came from. These ballots are not secure. I talked to a leading expert. Her name is Dr. Rebecca Mercury. I don't like to throw out names to confuse people, but this particular expert does a seminar every year. She teaches a class at the University of Maryland, and once a year she talks about the securities of money transferring, paper money, and the lottery, and kind of puts it in twine and the parallels of what our elections are like. She says the majority of these companies that make these mail-in ballots, these are not, monopoly money is more secure. These ballots are not secure. They're not easy to be made of. They're not authentic. You can make a ton of them. You know, it's just, you can reproduce them. I mean, there's like one little code on our Los Angeles one. You just copy that code and you make a couple of names up, and now with ballot harvesting, you take it right to the box. It goes right into the system, baby. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. They're not really, they're validating them, they're saying, but they're looking at these things. There's no real validation in these things. They're just going right through.
I want to give another example, Pasta, because we were both there for this one also. Like, people don't really understand, like, when we say election integrity, this is our bread and butter. This is it. Like, anybody could claim to be an expert on a lot of different shit. Like, I would go to the gray zone for any foreign policy thing. If I want to get the straight line answer about foreign policy, I would go to Jimmy for any number of interviews, right? Because he gets the best interviews, and he gets some pretty, but like, when it comes to election integrity, outside of us, I would go to Tim Canova. And no offense to Greg Palast, I'm not even going to Greg Palast before I go to Pasta to ask a question, or go to Fiorella to ask a question, or go trust their sources, or go to Tim Canova with his Progress for All nonprofit and his dedication to exposing election integrity. But in New Hampshire, we went to go interview some people, but we had learned prior to going to New Hampshire for the primary, oh shit, the three biggest counties are all still using the, not just voting machines, but the worst possible voting machine that they could be using, right? Yeah. So we go and ask the poll worker who was in charge of everything, hey, do you think that these voting machines could be hacked? How confident are you in the security of these machines? Oh no, these machines couldn't be hacked. And we're like, what do you mean? Oh no, it's just impossible to hack them. They're not connected to the internet. We're like, yeah, but are you sure? Because there's an opening in the back of the machine that you could just put a SD card in, right? Or a USB slot in. And they were like, he was like, nope, that can't happen. That's impossible. And me and Pasta and Johnny and Fiorella like, what? It's like, it's right here. It's right here. Every other, like a bunch of states, almost every other state has disallowed the use of that machine because of how hackable it is. And that's also one of the few machines, not only is it hackable, but you can't even trace the hack.
Yeah. So and it's funny too, though, just really quick, that when we did the hand counting, the exit polls were on. So, you know, brilliantly in New Hampshire, anywhere they use those machines, the counties that they use those machines, exit polls way off. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're 100% correct. And it was also a matter of where Bernie or Tulsi could have an observer. Because in New Hampshire, at least during the primaries, you can literally watch somebody hand count every single ballot in that precinct. And where that happened, Tulsi did very well. Bernie most often won. When you know, Tulsi was working with limited resources and Bernie's was Bernie, didn't have one everywhere, and Bernie didn't have them in the most important places, which was weird. And that's where there was a massive exit polling discrepancies. And in a lot of situations, to be frank, it looked like votes were literally being taken from Tulsi in some instances and given to Kamala, right? Or even taken from Yang and given to Kamala to make it so that, because Yang was doing well there, and then all of a sudden he started falling, and then Tulsi ended up passing him at some point. And so my point is that these are the type of people who are in charge. These are considered the authorities. And this is in New Hampshire, one of the most important states in the country, in the most important, you know, in what a lot of people feel is the most important primary, because it sets the tone for the rest of the primaries. That's the first primary of the nation. It's the first election of the nation. And the guy, one of the largest precincts, says, no, this machine isn't hackable. Yeah.
I mean, well, it's a shame, because a lot of these poll workers actually believe they're doing the right thing. we encountered that whole situation with the provisional ballots in East LA when they had 6 machines in the room, only 6. But in the nice area they got 26. Mm-hmm. But in the area where there's Latino and people of color, 6, and 3 of them were down. And we see people at a table filling out pink ballots, and I go walking over and I said, "Excuse me, sir, why are you filling out a provisional ballot? Did you not have your registration properly?" Then he goes, "No, I've been trying to use the machines for 45 minutes, so they gave me a provisional and they said it's the same and it's going to count." Like, no, it's not. By
is that when you went off on him?
Ballot. I went off because the guy, and I felt bad because he really thought, like the same guy in New Hampshire, that little small guy who was so willing to help and talk and think that everything was okay. This gentleman too, he actually thinks it's okay because somebody told them it's okay.
Yeah, they're gonna tell the plan to the Pogue. They're gonna tell the plan to the little E1, E2, little private. No. That's not what they're gonna do. But they're gonna definitely. But you can be. I mean, I hate to use that phrase because I'm sure they're nice people. But you can be a useful idiot to the system.
Yeah.
And in fact, that's exactly who they get. But for people who don't think that, they're like, it's different though because the Democrats don't control. That's not how it works, bro. In the general election, the Democrats still control their precincts. They still control them. I was there in 2018 during Tim Canova's race. Tim Canova's going to be on tomorrow. By the way, everybody, it's going to be on at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard to describe what he dealt with. But the moral of the story is I was observing. I was a poll observer for Tim Canova in I want to say it's Plantation in that area. And I asked somebody, hey, why are you arbitrarily separating ballots? Like, it was a pretty simple question, right?
Yeah.
And the poll worker walks up to me and was like, "You need to go." I was like, "Bitch, who are you? And why do I need to go?" Because, and I had the statute memorized at that point. But I was like, "No, I'm allowed to be here because da 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 da." And she was like, "You know what? I'm calling Brenda." She was referring to Brenda Snipes. So she calls Brenda Snipes, who is fired, by the way, in case you didn't know, for cheating twice. That was her second time doing it. And Brenda Snipes then threatened to call the cops if I didn't leave. Now, because I was with another friend and Tim, they were just like, "Hey, just go ahead and leave." Because I left with Suzanne. They were like, just go ahead and leave and head to the party. Because Tim said, he's like, "I'll take care of it." But he kept a mental note of it. Then we kept a mental note of and videos of all the other stuff we saw. And then something that would seemingly be innocuous, like if you just only thought of that one instance in the vacuum, like, maybe she was just a bitch. Like that could just be it. Nope. What happened? The day after, about 2 to 3 days after that, 3 election supervisors, including Brenda Snipes, were fired. All of them were in Democratic counties. There was ballot tampering and vote rigging and ballots being carried off in people's personal vehicles. That was never supposed to happen. And that's probably why they were separating them. And the counts, and Tim Canova in his race, we were watching it live on the election supervisor's website. And as more votes were counted overall, they were losing votes. Like literally, we saw the number going down. And this became national news. Even Marco Rubio talked about it. Like, so that one instance, like, immediately raised Tim's antenna and was like, okay, there's something going on. And that started in a Democratic precinct with a Democratic poll worker who was in charge of that precinct calling another Democrat who's the supervisor of elections for that entire, which was the largest congressional district in the country, actually. And then all hell breaks loose because so it's the Republicans in general elections tend to rig in a different fashion. They erase people off the voter rolls. Of course, they gerrymander throughout their terms in the House and in their state legislature. But that's not the same thing as the Democrats rig it when they got control of things too. When something doesn't smell right, you don't say, "Well, I know it doesn't smell right, but it's fine because I don't like the person that's being cheated." You know what I'm saying? Well, like, I don't like the Patriots. Bite you in the ass. Yeah. I don't like the Patriots, for example. But now don't get me wrong, I'm pretty sure Bill Belichick cheats more than anybody else. But if I saw like Bill Belichick getting cheated or the Patriots being cheated, I would call it straight. Like, I don't like them, but you getting cheated. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, and that's like you always. We got to call balls and strikes if we're going to ever get anywhere. Because if our activism is only going to be based off of partisan gain, then we're never going to get anything done. In fact, we'll be taken advantage of. It'll be the opposite.
Yeah. Well, a couple things to point out. Number one is that I left the Navy as an E3, so that E1 and 2, I'm not one of them, so I'm okay. Number two, That's just a Navy joke for out there for everybody for who don't know what's going on. Me and Niko. Number two is that the thing is that you were pointing out too, because I got thrown out of a Florida precinct too as well, and that's the crazy thing, that the people don't know what's going on with our elections. The workers don't know what's going on in our elections. Only the officials up top know what's going on in our elections, so they know how to manipulate them. And if you allow them to manipulate them against Donald Trump, you're going to allow them to manipulate them against you. And in fact,
they've been manipulating. They use Russiagate against Donald Trump. Then they use Russiagate against who?
You. Everybody,
Bernie Sanders.
Everybody else. Bernie Sanders.
And then what happened?
The next progressive, everything.
Then what happened?
What happened? Yeah, and
he did.
He did, and he was actually capitulating towards it too as well, like the same type of language, which was very disgusting. But here's the thing, Niko. I play poker, right? Let me tell you, as a poker player, how I knew they were going to fix this. And I've been saying this, and people tell me it's crazy. Pasta, they've just never done that before. There's been no reporting of this and stuff. I did a little report when Bill Barr won in Wolf Blitzer, and when Tulsi came out with the ballot harvesting bill, which is another thing that's a real big part of this election, which is why the Democrats cheated, because they said nothing about this, because this was a mechanism they used to help cheat with those mail-in ballots.
They didn't say anything about it after the Republicans tried to use ballot harvesting in North Carolina, and they literally had to overturn an election and reconduct the election because the Republicans tried to cheat the Democrats using ballot harvesting, but the Democrats still want to pretend like there's no such thing as rigging.
Yeah. Well, the poker thing, here's the reason I knew it. It was three things, and we talked about it every step of the way. The first came with the HEROES Act. The HEROES Act, just like the CARES Act, filled with a lot of pork, money going here, money there, nothing to do with coronavirus. Let's make sure the Kennedy Center can operate, even though it won't be open for another year. Who cares? Let's do it, whatever. Boom. Okay. One of the provisions in the HEROES Act was that they wanted to strike an amendment from the HAVA Act, which is the Help America Vote Act, which came apart after the George Bush Gore election situation. And that amendment said that they can strike down the state's right, and it was 32 states, their rights to check the ballot signatures, absentee ballot signatures, meaning that they didn't have to go through that signature process, and they could just take all the ballots and stuff it even more.
Okay,
so that was
pause.
one.
Say that again, because people need to hear that shit.
Yes. In the original HEROES Act, and go look it up, I think USA Today wrote an article about it.
Sponsored
Nancy
by
Pelosi.
The Democrats, the constructing of Nancy Pelosi's HEROES Act in the House when it was signed and pushed through, went to the Senate. Mitch McConnell and Trump said, we're never going to sign this thing. Now, everybody was fascinated around and fixated on the cash part. Oh, it's the $3 trillion versus the $1 trillion. They're not meeting on the money. This is bullshit. No, one of the things that was in that HEROES Act, that original HEROES Act, was striking down an amendment from the HAVA Act, Help America Vote Act. And that amendment allows the 32 states to verify their absentee ballots through signatures. Well, this amendment, if it was struck down, would mean that the state didn't have to verify the signatures on the ballots, and they could just take them. So that tipped me off right away. It's like, oh, they're trying to stuff the ballot box over here. The second one we talked about, this phony Fugazi attack on the post office. All of a sudden, the postmaster general's got to be fired because he's doing this and doing that. Well, first of all, the things that were going on, he had just taken office. They were from the previous postmaster general that were put in play, and he actually reversed those decisions and said, all right, you know what? I'll hire management now, and we'll make sure we have people on here, enough staff. That wasn't even done by me. And they made a fuss about these mail sorting machines because they were clearing them out because they didn't need them and they didn't use them anymore because mail is different nowadays in 2020 than it was in 1980. And they were trying to say he was removing these machines to sack the mail-ins at the post office. And they were all calling for his head. I'm like, they are manufacturing a phony crisis here because, as we know, they signed that whole bill in 2009, Democrats and Republicans, which said the post office had to have 75 years of liquidity in their retirement funds. So they were actually putting money in the bank for employees they didn't hire. And by doing so, they would have to continue to cut their staff. That was done by Republicans and Democrats. So this whole manufactured thing. Go ahead. And it's funny how everybody was just so hell bent on this narrative that the USPS was being completely and totally defunded. The postmaster needed to be fired because he already implemented policies that was going to hurt the USPS. And yet Milwaukee had literally 2/3 of their votes come from absentee ballots that were mailed in. And all of a sudden, now everybody has confidence in that USPS system. That's because you just got to talk about mail-in ballots. That's where all the numbers are coming from. And so I just want to address that thought real quick. Once again, for people who don't know, the Senate races generally have numbers that are comparable to the presidential races in these states because the Senate is all-encompassing. It takes into account everybody's votes in the state. Now, if that was the case, by the way, this is if I accept the argument that every single mail-in ballot is counted at once and all reported at the exact same time for every single precinct in the state, which is not how mail-in ballots are counted. In case you were curious, it's not how it goes. But if I accepted that framing, why is it that the spike that we saw, literally the 90-degree spike that we saw in the middle of the night, only applied to Joe Biden, not the senators that were running in the same states?
Yeah. Well, that brings us to our third point that we were about to talk about, which really just goes right into that, is that the whole myth, and you caught this too, we talked about this. This was kind of easy for us. Mail-in ballots favor Democrats over Republicans. No, they don't historically. Mail-in ballots favor older people historically. Go back and look at it, and those older people tend to be more conservative. So that's a fugazi thing. So that's why in the middle of the night, the mail-in ballots that just came in, that we just got, that we just received, here they are, 132,000 of them in the state of Wisconsin at 4 a.m. in the morning by unmarked cars, right? By a Ferrari coming in, and I think she said it was some poll worker caught her. And then all of a sudden, Mr. Joe Biden, who's 117,000 votes down, is now up by 6,000. Excuse me? That just doesn't happen that way, Niko. We know this. We track this. How many people out there who are watching this show right now know that when Bernie Sanders was down by half as much, with more percentage of the precincts reporting, they called it. They didn't call it because they were all in line because they knew this shit was coming. And that's why that poster thing, and I said that these posters aren't posters, they're propagandists. Mm-hmm. They had Biden up 16, 15 points in Wisconsin. Little secret here, Niko. I bet $100 on Trump taking Wisconsin because I got plus 265 on it because I knew it was the only thing I did was I said I think he's going to take Wisconsin because the Wisconsin Supreme Court shot down that whole notion that they can accept absentee ballots after the election is closed.
After the election, which is weird.
Yeah, but you know why the pollsters had that number so high, Niko? They knew where the fix was in. It was Wisconsin and Michigan, and every single state that Donald Trump had a sound lead, where we were sitting there laughing at people's maps, looking at our maps and say, they should call this at any time. 5 million more votes than Barack Obama by all time. It's said and done, and it's been done by way of mail-in. And if you believe the mail-ins are sound, you're a chump. This is the most vulnerable area of our elections. We need to get this straight, Niko. We need to stop
Here's where it gets bad. You're talking about 1.9 million absentee ballots. So basically, for those of you who don't know, in Wisconsin, almost every single absentee ballot was returned. And there was only about 3.3 million people who voted, supposedly. And which would mean, of course, once again, that almost a little bit less than 2/3 of the entire vote came from mail-in ballots. And the argument, of course, has been that Joe Biden and the Democrats are the ones who primarily benefit from this. Now, if that is true, and by the way, I verified this, almost all of the mail-in ballots in Wisconsin had started being counted prior to the election, so that obviously they can start being reported, because it isn't like the Secretary of State and the clerks of these counties have to keep their numbers accurate too. And so they have their own process to count their ballots and get their reporting, and every county has a different process, and that's why the numbers come at different times. So if mail-in ballots were the ones that primarily went to the Democrats, and the mail-in ballots were the ones that were being counted first because they were being turned in early because of what we just talked about, the Supreme Court case, even Wisconsin said that 1.9 million ballots had been returned by November the 1st. So this was before the election. So why didn't Joe Biden jump out to a lead when 2/3 of the ballots were supposedly in his favor? Why did that have to happen literally in the middle of the night? And barely. Because by their logic, overwhelmingly, the mail-in ballots favor Democrats. But also, on top of that, if mail-in ballots overwhelmingly favor all Democrats, why the fuck is it that only Joe Biden was the one who benefited from them? Somebody explain this to me. Square this circle for me, Pasta.
Yeah, well, I can't wrap my head around that, Nico. I'm saying the only thing I think there's some fugazi stuff going on again. I'm going to keep hitting this word till it comes into American homes, until they start saying it's fugazi. I want little babies going fugazi and pointing at the screen, because that's what this is. Nico, can you wrap your head around this one? Last election, Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, 55% of the electorate voted, right? 55% of the elect, 45 people said, nah, none of these guys really inspire me. I'm just going to stay at home. You get 65% to an election. That is good. That is like you're giving high fives, like, holy shit. If you got 70%, unheard of. Wisconsin, 91% turnout. You're telling me that Joe Biden inspired?
That's what the final count, 91%.
91% of the eligible voted. 91% voted. Ladies and gentlemen, that is just not happening. We know these elections. They do this to you with Bernie Sanders when they call it while people are in line.
Reverse. We got to address this, because I don't know if you saw the show I did the other day, but I was breaking down the numbers of Wisconsin. So
I saw it.
In January 2020, they only had 3 million registered voters. And now, magically, literally, miraculously, they ended up getting 800,000, which looked like it's probably ended up being a 900,000 registered voter spike. And that only led to 3.3 million people voting for some reason. Like in 2016, there were 3 million people who voted. So you had a 900,000 voter increase, or at least registered voter increase, but only 200,000 more people or 300,000 more people voted. And now they're saying it's a 92% turnout.
Yeah.
That ain't adding up. And also, like we discussed earlier on the show, and that clip will be available in a little bit. Pasta actually was the one who sent me that article originally, where the Milwaukee Daily Wire, they used the Secretary of State's website to import all the results, where there were 7 wards that clearly had were 200% turnout. Yeah, that's not possible.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if we talked about it briefly yesterday. Somebody made a phone call, right? They was like, hey, man, fix this, because the article started going viral, clearly. And yesterday, right before my live show, they corrected everything. Now, in this correction, the Biden and Trump both lost votes. Lost them. Now, the problem with that is that correction came yesterday evening. They called the election yesterday, morning?
Oh, they called it the 4 a.m. that morning, I think, of that election that night. Like, people woke up. We in the morning on Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. 11 o'clock we started. We got a note at 11:30 Pacific time that they just called Wisconsin.
Okay, so and they called it for Joe Biden. Okay, yeah,
for Joe Biden,
except for
20,500 votes. Think about that.
And like I just said, those numbers came from the Secretary of State's website, probably. So you called the election based off of false numbers in the largest county in Wisconsin?
Yeah.
And no one sees any problems with that?
Yeah, and you reported too as well. Now these numbers are not going to be accurate whatsoever, what they're reporting, because they're messing stuff up. Now they took the tabulation and they screwed it up. So now to go back and try to fix this thing is going to be ridiculous. And that's something that people have to understand. These elections, the process in which we have the ballots cast and the way the ballots are made, it's almost impossible to go back and track these things. I mean, there's so many different facets of our elections that are screwed up. But right now, to try to go back and correct this, it's going to be damn near impossible. And we know what went on. These dumps were just ridiculous.
I'm glad that it would be impossible. And I was talking about this on Jamar's show this morning. Jamar and Shane Tranahan on Fall on Sputnik Radio. I was saying, and he brought the same point. The reason that you see this, they're terrified that Trump will try to challenge this. And he probably will. And let's be honest, you should be terrified, because Trump's track record against the Democrats is like 100% at this point. He's batting fucking 1,000 against them. So why wouldn't I challenge it? Now, here's the problem. It's not that the results will necessarily show Trump won. That's a possibility, and that could be the problem. But that's not what it is. What the results are going to show is that you can't figure out who the fuck won. You have zero idea. You don't know, because you don't know where the fucking ballots are at. Because at this point, people are going to go into damage control, right? They're going to start throwing shit, destroying shit, breaking machines. They're going to, like in Milwaukee and in Philadelphia and Wayne County and Joe Stein's law, shoot tens of thousands of votes couldn't be reconciled. Like that resulted in Pennsylvania having to convert over to paper ballots in most of the state. And now, unfortunately, once again, who counts the ballots? That's another question that we have to get into later. But that's my point, is that Jill Stein's lawsuit already showed in Pennsylvania what was taking place. Then the establishment busted their ass to block her from suing for recount in Milwaukee and Wisconsin, and in Wayne County in Detroit. Wayne County in Michigan. And what a coincidence. Full circle, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania are where we're having the most issues at the moment. That that's not a coincidence, people. Yeah. And what's going to happen is, when Jill Stein, and this is breaking news. It was massive. This was a bomb show, okay? But nobody talked about it because
nobody paid attention to it.
Milwaukee is ran by who? Democrats.
Yep.
Wayne County, Detroit area is ran by who? Democrats. Philadelphia is ran by who? Democrats.
Yeah.
And Jill Stein's Green Party, so they were like, we can't talk about this. But this is different. We have the tweeter in chief bringing attention to something that we have been talking about for years. Of course, leftists get shut down for bringing up election integrity, but Donald Trump is Donald Trump. He does what the hell he wants to. And when he talks about something at the very bare minimum, everybody pays attention. Yeah. And hopefully what people will learn is not that necessarily Donald Trump will win if we get a recount. What they're going to figure out is we don't know who the hell won. And that this might have been the case for several elections prior to this and several primaries. People will finally start to pay attention to what was said in the DNC fraud lawsuit. Maybe they'll finally pay attention to what happened to Tim Canova, what happened to Tiffany Caban, the DA, who got beat because she had thousands of absentee ballots go towards, after she won, 2,000 absentee ballots just showed up out of nowhere. The establishment candidate got all of them, even though there were like 5 people who ran. Right? So that's what I think the biggest fear is that not that he'll win, but because it'll prove the system is a sham and that they have zero idea who won and they have no way to fix what they've already taken it so far that they're trying to get Trump to step down. They're trying to get him to give this up because you're not just going to expose Democrats, you're going to expose Republicans too.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of Republicans behind this, and they never said a lot of things because they use different mechanisms to cheat. And the thing about it is the mechanisms which the Republicans usually use to cheat. And first of all, you got to be on lock, stock, same footwork as the president and the Republican Party. That's not the case. We know this, that they're like, blip, they're not on the same page. There's a lot of Republicans who don't like the establishment is not crazy about Donald Trump. But the mechanisms which a lot of Republicans use is they disenfranchise people from those roles. People of color, whatnot, that normally vote Democrat. But Donald Trump didn't want that because Donald Trump wanted to show everybody that he can get more black and brown votes than any Republican before him in a long time. And since 1960, he has the record. Just think about this, Niko. The Democrats' way of stealing elections is they inflate. They put in the fake ballots. They give themselves extra. They stuff the ballot box. Mm-hmm. And they successfully did it this time. I'll say that to my dying day, 5 million votes to more than Barack Obama for a zombie guy and stuff like that. So the mechanism of play were in there and play for him, you know what I'm saying, to win. They weren't going to disenfranchise people from these ballots because Donald Trump wanted those votes. And the votes they normally disenfranchise, he couldn't do that because he wanted to prove a point. And think about this, Niko. The racist, the most racist, sexist president of all times that Bernie Sanders calls him, got all those
the
votes,
most racist, the most sexist
president of all time. Just think about this, Niko. Had they not inflated the 5 million votes that I think they inflated right now, clearly, I'm saying it, whatnot, the percentages of Donald Trump of the black and Latino vote would be even bigger. Think about that. And here's the shame. At the end of the day, Trump doesn't win, Biden doesn't win, the American people lose, and we are not looking at the right place. This is the one area. Clinton Curtis said this a long time ago, the guy from Florida who they came to him to flip a program. He says, we got to stop every single bit of activism and concentrate right here. The thing I first saw you on Jimmy Dore was talking about this situation right here. We've come full circle, my friend. We got to stop saving the whales. We got to stop the fracking movement. We got to stop everything we got. We got to use all our powers. And no matter what, the vote must count. And only until we get back to that will we see some real justice. Until then, we're flying blind.
Let's look at we can just reverse engineer everything that we've been saying based off of the narratives that the Democrats have been putting out there, right? So immediately, the USPS all of a sudden became a concern, and that is when the Democrats all of a sudden believed in election fraud again, right? All of a sudden. That's usually what happens. After the primary is over, if you talk about election fraud during the primary, you're a conspiracy theorist. After the primary is over, you're allowed to talk about it as long as you're talking about it only exclusively involving Republicans. That's the only time you're allowed to talk about it. Yeah. But they immediately talked about the USPS, which to me was bizarre. Because I'm like, the fuck? Why? Is that the first thing we go to? I'm like, oh, shit. We know what's about to happen. Because we've had so much experience with absentee ballots. We had been talking about it for a while. That's exactly what they were going to do. So we knew that was going to be part of the play. And look what happened. It was the first thing that everyone used to justify the outcome. Oh, look at mail-in ballots. Oh, okay. Coincidence. Okay, now fast forward. You can look at the what else did they say? There was another narrative that they put out there that, oh man, I just lost my train of thought. There's another narrative that they had been putting out there regarding.
Well, could I say the one narrative that I want to point? And if you remember, you'll probably remember when I say it. This was prepared. This was set in motion. They used Donald Trump to, even though Donald Trump had discovered where they were going to cheat and discovered early. William Barr said it. We all said that. We saw this from the amendment. They had this in motion. They had this in play right away. You see banners out there. Count every vote. Count every vote.
That's
you know
it. That's it.
Count every vote.
The
count every
just
vote.
Go vote.
Even
go
the
vote.
fake ones.
Vote. Hulu getting vote. Amazon Prime getting vote. Fuck everywhere I goddamn go. Just vote. Don't worry about if your vote counts, but we need you to vote because we need the numbers because we have to have some type of like at least because if you register to vote, that's all they don't even really need you to vote. They just need you to register to vote so they can justify the amount of votes that are being reported, right?
Yep.
And yet, like maybe with Obama, I saw that type of outcome, but like it was more organic with Obama, right? People genuinely just wanted, and plus, let's be honest, right? Obama ran a ridiculously good campaign, and he was a deceitful motherfucker. That was a deceitful dude, but it made sense. And he was also the most popular president. Still, it really is the most popular president in history. So like it makes sense with Obama. That's not like it was like go vote, but nobody really liked Biden. Like, I mean, I could, then the argument was that, oh, black people are going to carry Biden to the homeland. That's not what happened. He lost a significant amount of black votes to Donald Trump. Like, he lost a lot of brown votes to Donald Trump. Definitely lost a lot of Southeast Asian votes to Donald Trump. So all the demographics that they were saying would put Trump under are actually what helped Trump beat the record. He also beat Obama's record, which is the part that nobody else really wants to discuss. And so
2 million more votes than Hillary Clinton. He was a phenomenon whether you like him or not.
Now we look at, so both of them broke Obama's record. So when Trump broke in the same race, right? Biden and Trump have both broke Obama's record in case you're curious. So when Trump breaks the record, he keeps the House, actually adds to the House, adds to the Senate. I mean, He kept all his gubernatorial seats from what I can see so far. And he said that he said this shit. We're going to break the record for black votes. He said it, which I'm like, bro, that's kind of reaching, aren't you? He didn't lie. Everything he predicted came to pass, actually, except for the actual declared victories. Now, when Biden breaks the record and beats Trump, supposedly, right? Beats Trump. Okay, did you win back the House? Well, no. Did you win back the Senate? Well, no. Did you even beat Obama's turnout percentage? No. So how the fuck did you beat the record? Did you beat him in unique individual donations? No.
Yeah.
The only thing you seem to beat him in are two categories. Population, like the total amount of registered voters, and the popular vote.
He got the mail-in record. More mail-in ballots went for Joe Biden than ever before. Niko, I got to get out of here and go ahead. I got another show. But let me just say this much, too, as well. The Trump people need to be a little bit more smart about this right now, too, when they're out in the streets. They can't just go out there with their Trump Pence thing and say, this wasn't fair, this wasn't fair. They need a message. They need a call. They have it in motion on the other side. Count every vote, which makes it seem like you're being fair and you're being inclusive and everybody votes count. But we know there's a lot of fake votes. They should start having signs that say, no fake votes. Something like that. A message that says, hey, America, put your attention on this. No fake votes.
I'm gonna sell this one. Like, so if y'all want to call me, I got you. All the strategists out there. You know how they say count every vote? Your strategy gotta make every vote count. Because we know that. Now you're not trying to get rid of votes. It's make every vote actually count and make sure every vote counts. Because if you make sure every vote counts, every legitimate vote will be, counting and going to the right person. But if you just say, stop the steal or stop voting or stop the count, like that makes it seem like, oh, you want us to even stop counting legitimate votes. And it's like what they always say, oh, the defund the police message has to be changed. And I somewhat agree with that, because it's not what I believe in, but because you do have to think about strategy when you're talking about creating, trying to create a marketing campaign, because effectively that's what they're trying to do. So I would say make every vote count rather than stop the steal or whatever, because what that makes it look like is you're trying to stop people from having.
They got to come up with something though.
And by the way, you see how they try to disarm the Republican narrative immediately, right? Make sure count every legal vote. Since when are y'all worried about the legality of voting? That's never been in their messaging, but they immediately refer to that because they're trying to disarm the idea that there's been ballot stuffing. But it's the Democrats. What do? They use that Machiavellian technique where they will gaslight you before you even get a chance to accuse them of what they're actually guilty of. So they say,
they're doing it. They're
good
saying,
at that what are you saying? We count every legal vote. We're saying it has to be a legal vote if we're counting it. We said it in the phrase. It's our catchphrase. It's in there. Like, no, bullshit. You're full of shit. And the reason you said that is because you're really snitching on yourself, because you're not counting legal votes. You're counting somebody else's votes, but I don't know whose vote it is. Evo Morales, where you at, bro? We need you. Now, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, Venezuela too. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning into that live stream segment of Mikasa Sukasa. Make sure y'all go follow Pasta Jardula at Yo Pasta on Twitter, and go follow the Convo Couch. I think they're actually about to be live in a few minutes, so go check them out at the Convo Couch on Rockfin, and of course on YouTube as well. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, always remember, more than anything else, find your best.